Okay, hello everyone. I think we can start. So it's week 10, right? Only 2 weeks left after this class. So, so do you have any question from the last week? We started network security, right? In terms of networks and communications, network security is very important aspect nowadays, especially, right? We know that networks and resources are very shared, like they are shared. So anyone can send data, anyone can receive data. So it means that businesses should have some mechanism so that the data sent is more secured in terms of everything, right? So we saw different examples in which IP spoofing is available, right? Packet sniffing is there. Like over the LAN, we can read all packets that are going on, right? So if I am sending some packets from this computer to the Wi-Fi router, all of you can see very easily with the help of different softwares. They are freely available, okay? But obviously, if I am going to send my credentials, username, password, or something, then obviously it should be some sort of encrypted. And for encryption, there are so many algorithms, and we discussed this thing that like encryption is just like a conversion of your data into some other language, and we call this thing sort of like public key and private key. So for example, if I am sending data to my friend and he has my private key supposed to be, then I will encrypt my data with the help of my public key, okay? At the end, friend can unlock that data with the help of private key, and it will only be unlocked if it was actually written or encrypted by my public key or some sort of a private key, okay? So it depends. Sometimes public key and private keys are same. Sometimes like I only know my private key and the receiver will know my public key, okay? So but it's just like encryption and decryption, and we have different algorithms for this sort of thing. So in today's lecture, we will complete cybersecurity and network security sort of thing. And in week 11 and 12, we would be discussing cloud computing, some sort of distributed networks in which we have services, different services. And many businesses are now relying on cloud computing. So do you have any idea about cloud computing? Or heard this word, something? Cloud computing? No? No ads, no, never. Cloud computing.
What do you mean with your question?
So do you know cloud computing?
Yeah,
Okay. So what it is?
it's like where you can store your data over internet, I guess, or
Yeah, yeah. So basically they are distributed services. It could be for storage purposes. It could be like computing powers, right? So for storage, like, do you know any cloud service of any company, or are you using any cloud, iCloud or Google Cloud, right? Or even for Microsoft Drive is there, right? OneDrive? OneDrive. So basically OneDrive or iCloud from Apple. So these are basically cloud services. They are providing you storage of 1 GB or 1 terabyte, and you can access that storage from anywhere. You only require the internet, right? So this is one of the cloud service that we are using. But other than that, we have different cloud services. For example, if I want to compute some algorithm and it takes thousands of GB RAM and special GPUs and processors, then obviously I cannot afford to buy all the GPUs and infrastructure sort of thing. Most probably it will cost me €1 million or something, right? So, but by using cloud computing might be, I would be paying 1,000 euro per month for 2 months. Uh, this is a period that in which I require that sort of thing. So this is sort of some cloud computing thing. So we will discuss this cloud computing in the next week, and with related to cloud computing, IoT devices, Internet of Things are also getting famous. Edge computing is also getting famous, right? And businesses are using this sort of thing. So technically they are advanced form of networks, distributed services, okay? So we will discuss cloud computing in the next week. And one more topic that I think is remaining is about wireless technologies. So we will discuss how this Wi-Fi works and what is 3G, 4G, and even what is 5G, right? So these are the advanced topics in networks, and all of the businesses are nowadays they are using it. So you should have at least some idea about this thing, okay? So because as a BIS people or students who know this sort of thing in businesses, or if they are working with some company, at least they can suggest something like in terms of security, what they can do, and similarly they should go for cloud computing or not, right? So we will be discussing these two things in the next two lectures. So in terms of network security, we discussed this thing that internet not originally designed with much security in mind. Okay, so original vision was that a group of mutually trusting users will be attached to a transparent network. So basic theme or starting theme was that like all people would be very good and they wouldn't be sending some viruses or different sort of things. They wouldn't be hacking something, right? So, you know, if the basic architecture is designed on something, then obviously you cannot change that basic architecture, but obviously you can build different layers of security on top of that, right? So, in terms of network security, we can consider security in all layers. It could be at HTTP level, it could be at transport layer, it depends, IP security, IPsec, okay? So we can consider security in all layers. So we now need to think about it, obviously, because how bad guys can attack computer networks, how we can defend networks against attacks, how to design architectures that are immune to attacks, okay? And in the last lecture, we also discussed this sort of thing, denial of service. And nowadays, there are so many, even they call it now distributed denial of service attacks, like hundreds of machines all over the world would be attacking your machine to restrict your service, right? So we discussed this thing many times, and even we know that like for example, if one government office has only one phone line and all over the Ireland or all over the world people are just like trying to call, but just not for asking some help or providing some information, but just to block something so that the legitimate users cannot make a call to that company or that organization. So this is some sort of denial of service. It's just like that if there is one entrance of one building and thousands of unwanted people just surround that building. They are not entering, and obviously because of that 1,000 or 2,000 people who want to enter that building cannot enter it, okay? So this is denial of service. So attackers make resources unavailable to legitimate traffic by overwhelming resources with bogus traffic, okay? So if I'm just creating connections, thousands of connections with Google server, and I'm just randomly searching something, definitely it would have some impact on Google's performance, right? But if it's distributed, just consider hundreds or thousands of machines all over the world are doing this thing, then obviously it would be a very huge problem for any web service, okay? So we will discuss, and we also discussed this thing that because of viruses and trojans and different things. Even you can become a victim, and you can become as a member of that denial of service attackers. Okay, so softwares would be installed on your laptop, and whenever you would be connected with the internet, you would become a member of that denial of service attackers. Okay, so we will discuss today how we can prevent this sort of thing. And in denial of service, obviously they would select target, then break into host around the network, see botnet. We will discuss this thing, right? And then obviously this will send multiple packets to target from compromised host. Okay, so it means that this target bandwidth would be overflow. So this is denial of service. So how can we avoid this sort of thing? Obviously there are so many technologies, and even companies are providing services to prevent denial of service. And obviously if there is some attack regarding to denial of service, they can help you to sort that problem. Okay, so we can use technologies, different sort of technologies. As this attack, denial of service attack, is coming from your internet service provider, so you have to contact immediately, that you have to tell them that we are facing this sort of problem. Okay, so by this way they can have some special hardwares and firewalls and different front end servers, so that they can prevent or avoid denial of service attacks for your service. Similarly, investigate black hole routing. So in networks, in terms of what is a black hole in general term, any idea? Black hole? No? Okay, so it is for you to read something on the internet. Okay, so in the next class I will ask, as a whole in the universe or something, what is a concept of black hole. So technically black hole is just a space in which, like, you just dump different data or things, but you cannot access it again. Okay, so but in terms of routing, investigate black hole routing, technically it directs excessive traffic into a null route. Okay, it will not send traffic to your computer, but it will send to some other server where you can make logs, and from logs you can analyze, like, from where this traffic is generating. Okay, sometimes referred to as a black hole. This can help prevent the targeted website or network from crashing. Okay, so but the problem is that the drawback is that both legitimate and illegitimate traffic is rerouted in the same way. So obviously if 100 requests, if you are putting 100 requests in the black hole, there is a chance that 1% traffic was okay, but at least you have prevented 99%, you have stopped 99% traffic to your way, right? So but you can analyze from there or investigate that traffic, and then you can restrict IPs. So we can restrict IPs very easily, and by restricting IPs or sometimes regions, they can avoid denial of service attacks. And the last thing that we can use to avoid denial of service attacks, we can configure firewalls and routers. Okay, and these are in terms of software configuration sort of things, but we can also install some sort of hardwares, right? So they call it as front end hardware. Okay, so front end hardware basically it's application front end hardware that's integrated into the network before traffic reaches a server. So it's just like a reception desk before reaching faculty of this office, this building. Okay, so it means that all the traffic would be coming to one server, but that server is not your server. So then this server, front end server, will analyze and screen data packets, and if they think, okay, this data is fine or legitimate, they can forward this request to the actual server. Okay, so so it can also help blocking threatening data. So ISPs do have this sort of thing. They have installed front-end hardwares, but if your company's data or services are more vulnerable and there are so many attacks of denial of service going on, then company can itself buy some hardware and install that front-end machine as a front-end hardware. Okay, so these are the different ways so we can how we can avoid denial of service. Any question? Denial of service. So is it clear what is denial of service attacks? And I hope you can list down 4 or 5 ways easily how we can prevent it or how we can avoid it, right? Okay. So in terms of security, obviously this cyber security term is like it's a buzzword, some sort of thing, but obviously in terms of network security, it's a very old problem. But nowadays, for last 5-10 years, even many universities are offering BS programs in cybersecurity, complete degree in BS security, and might be NGI Galway is also thinking about starting a new program on cybersecurity, like at BS level. So, so because of its importance. So, the internet allows an attacker to work from anywhere on the planet. We know that. Okay, it means that he or she can connect any machine from anywhere. The only thing is IP, right? If he or she knows IP address of your server, he can ping, he can connect, he can make TCP connection, he can send request, HTTP request. So it's very easy, right? So risk caused by poor security knowledge and practice, obviously identity theft, right? And monetary theft, it could be possible, or legal ramifications, or sanctions or termination if policies are not followed, right? So that's why this cybersecurity is very important, because in terms of EU laws and different sort of things, data protection sort of thing, if some company is not having some good sort of data security or something, then there could be some sort of sanctions or there could be some sort of termination of licenses, right? It is possible for businesses as well. Like if businesses are taking users data, customers data, and every 2 months or every 6 months they are leaking data or their data is getting hacked, then obviously their licenses to continue their online e-commerce website could be halted, right? Could be revoked. So it is very important that businesses should have proper security knowledge, and obviously they should have some mechanisms so that their data is protected. So data in terms of everything, like it could be credentials information. Obviously, if that credentials information is compromised, you know that HSC data was compromised few months back, right? And after that, people are facing different problems, like because of that data, people are getting unwanted calls, scams, and different sort of things that I'm talking from Garda and I'm talking from bank, and you have to provide this information. And like in 8 months, in even okay, this is 11 months, but for last 10 months, millions of euro from Ireland people have lost because of this sort of thing. Okay, so this is reported millions of euros. You know that if there are so many unreported cases, okay, if the money is small or something, right? So that's why this security is very important, because internet applications are very easy to develop. Anyone can develop WhatsApp application, no problem. For a developer, he can develop. But the problem is that obviously, other than providing a good service and reliable service, the security of data is very important. Okay, so this network security or cyber security is very promising field. Even BIS people can go and suggest businesses that how they can secure their data in terms of networks, right? So there is one institute in US, SANS Institute. So according to them, the top vectors for vulnerabilities available to a cyber criminal are web browser, okay, and instant message clients, that Facebook messengers or some sort of Skype or Zoom even, right? And you know that last year there was some bug in Zoom and people hacked different sort of data through Zoom. It was possible. Web applications, then excessive user rights. So cybersecurity is safety. Security, we must protect our computers and data in the same way that we secure the doors to our homes. And safety is about we must behave in ways that protect us against risk and threats that come with technology. Okay, so this security and safety thing sort of thing is very important. It could be antivirus software installations, or it could be firewalls, right? This is security, right? And in terms of safety, we can say that safe email behavior, right? And or safe software downloading behavior. If you are downloading some software, then it should be safe enough. The resource should be safe enough that you can trust on that thing. If you are not, if you don't have any trust, or if you don't have any knowledge about that download link, then don't download that file. Okay, that would be free for you, but believe me, it would be helping some cyber criminals to get data or make your machine as a DOS member. Okay, so just remember that it's a very basic economics rule that in this world there is nothing free, right? Just remember that there is nothing free. You either have paid in the past, or in the future you will pay for that thing. So there is nothing free in this world. So if someone is providing you some free softwares, so definitely they would be looking for some other data, or in future they can use your machine for some other attacks, for some different type of attacks. Okay, so I think in terms of internet, and when you are working in businesses, in different organizations, or even for your personal information, you must be very careful, like in terms of downloading, in terms of surfing internet, right? So so we can say, like, for example, one computer programmer creates a attack software. It will post to some bulletin, it would contain some sort of SQL injection or buffer overflow or password crackers or password dictionaries, and then obviously these people would download that thing, and obviously they will report something. But in most of the cases, data would be hacked very easily by criminals. Okay, like for example, if 10,000 people downloaded that file and even 20 or 30 people reported it by after 2 months or even 1 month, still there is a big window of time in which criminals can get data. Okay, so, and there are so many examples of, like, you know, like even you can purchase email addresses, valid email addresses. Yahoo email addresses were compromised some years ago, and like you can see it's very cheap. 1 million email addresses earn $8, right? Like if you want 1 million valid email addresses, you can get it in $10 or $20. It's not very expensive, right? And then you can spam emails about something like you have won lottery or something, right? So it's very easy, $10-20 or something. But the problem is that even if from 1 million emails, if they got some data from 10,000 people or 5,000 people, they would be earning a lot, right? So that's why we have to see this sort of thing, that these cyber criminals usually what they do, they simply will take some, for example, PDF reader, they will add some criminal code or some virus or some sort of things, and then they can ask everyone, okay, you can download this thing freely or quickly, okay? So that's why you have to make sure that the link is trustable, okay? Even if they are providing very simple basic calculator program, don't download, okay? So these are the different threats. We have viruses, worms, right? Trojan horses or logic bombs. Social engineering is there. Rootkits are there. Botnets or zombies. Okay. So the zombies, in denial of service attack, whenever you would become a victim, you would become a zombie for that would be sending data to that machine. Okay. So we will discuss this thing one by one. So viruses. So what is a virus? A virus attaches itself to a program, file or disk. Okay. For example, it could be a one image of Galway or Eiffel Tower, very good picture, so that people know, okay, I can download this picture and I can use it in my presentation, my trip to Paris or something, for example, right? Freely available, and it's highly DSLR picture, and obviously they use Photoshop and all the stuff, so it's very good looking in terms of presenting something, right? So but it may contain some virus, okay? It may contain some file, and that file could be hidden, okay? You cannot see, and you know, on Windows operating system you can easily unhide different extensions and different sort of things, right? So it's very easy to attach one file or virus with some file or some program, okay? So when the program is executed, the virus activates and replicates itself. So it is possible that this program is just want to exhaust your hard disk, and it will just copy paste thousands of files, okay? Or it can change files on your computers, okay? So any one of you have ever any experience with viruses on their laptop, or heard about from their friends that something strange is no?
Yes.
Okay. What was that, like any
No, I haven't like got a virus myself, but I have heard friends who got it, and it was just shutting down.
okay.
Didn't work anymore.
Yeah, so it depends that what is the functionality of that program, okay? So but sometimes that virus is just to annoy you, and might be then you will receive, okay, we can remove this virus if you can transfer €100, and you don't have any other option, okay? For example, you have very important presentation tomorrow, and today your computer is hacked. You have to pay €100 if you don't have any backup, right? So just remember that always take backup of your important data. Even your reliable laptop can break at any time. It doesn't need to be from any brand or something. It can happen. So much better if you have some important data of your research or your thesis or your projects or your assignments, take one backup. You can zip that file and email to yourself, or you can simply put in some drive, right? And always put data after zipping and or some sort of adding some password to it. Okay, so even that on drive, don't put all the data directly to the drive. So it's a good practice to prevent this sort of thing. So the virus may be benign or malignant, but execute its payload at some point. Okay, so sometimes viruses are such that like they reside in your hard disk for 2-3 years and do nothing, but then after 2-3 years they get activated and they perform different sort of things. It is possible. Okay, so like there are so many intelligence agencies of every country working in almost in every country, in every other country. So they would be targeting different people. Okay, this person is living here, we don't require now its data. Oh, after 2 years they are moving to some other country and the location or something, or might be this person is in some competitor's company, a new employer, as a new employer, right? So then this virus can be activated and can get data. Okay, so in order to recover or prevent virus attacks, avoid potentially unreliable websites and even emails, and system restore, just backup sort of thing, reinstall operating system, use and maintain antivirus softwares. Okay,
But is virus, as it's replicated itself, can you say that viruses is some kind of denial or DOS attack?
it depends if it is made for DOS attack. What is the purpose of that virus? It will depend. Okay,
Yeah.
so for example, if for example at NUIG we have one computer lab and one computer was infected, and then this computer was sending data of multiple garbage files to all computers and filling the shared drive. It means that it's some sort of denial of service attack, so that people cannot use all computers in the lab. It depends what is the functionality of that virus. Like it could be for stealing data. It's very easy to write a program like in computer science or something, in any language, might be 8 or 10 line code would be enough to write a virus or something. Okay, so it's not difficult. Like people who write code for viruses, it would take hardly 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes maximum to write a very small virus program. Okay, so but it depends. Nowadays attacks are different. Like people in US, you might be know that like it's a very, very common problem that people target old people. These attackers attack, they target old people, and then their system got hacked, and they will call you as a service provider. They wouldn't tell you that we are the person who is responsible, I am the person who is responsible for your computer hacking or something. They would say I am from one maintenance or from one computer company, and I can resolve your system for, let's say, $500 or $1,000. It depends. Okay, and obviously if you don't have so much knowledge about computers, then you can easily be trapped, right? So these are the viruses, and viruses are all over the world. Whenever you are downloading movies or big files, do expect that you are hosting viruses. And might be this virus is not harmful to your computer because of operating system difference or because of your antivirus software, but for example you are giving data in USB to your friend, then this virus will be shifted to that friend computer. And on friend's computer, obviously if the environment is okay for virus to explode, then obviously they will do it. Okay, so that's why we have to take care of different sometimes appear to be very useful or entertainment programs or videos or email attachments, right? For example, computer games, video clips or photos. So expect 99% of the things would have viruses, okay? Then we have worms. So independent program that replicates itself and sends copies from computer to computer across network connections. So obviously, in terms of viruses are coming from some files, and when we are clicking on that files, then obviously they would be activating. Might be on activation, they would be sending worms to different machines, okay? So they are independent programs, and upon arrival, the worm may be activated to replicate. So it could be through emails, it could be through different things, but usually we got worms and viruses from shared resources, or whenever we are sharing some USBs, or even if you are using some public internet, or especially on the it could be like if you are using some free charging ports at the airports or buses or something. It's very easy to transfer worms, and because you are connecting your data cable, right? You are connecting your charging cable directly to your mobile or your laptop. So anything can be transferred to your computer, okay, or your smartphone. So these are the worms. Then we have logic bombs, right? So these are the different programs. It's sort of logic, right? Malware logic executes upon certain conditions. The program is often used for otherwise legitimate reasons, okay? So, and obviously we have sort of thing that like people can send different things hidden in a different thing, right? For example, downloading a game. It could be fun, but contains hidden code that gathers personal information without your knowledge, okay? So it is possible. So similarly, for social engineering, we know that sometimes we get calls and asking for mother's maiden name or some sort of other information, right? It could be possible in person, but nowadays we are getting phone calls from different thing, like I'm calling from NUIG and today you used internet and our internet was compromised, this thing, right? So this sort of thing is possible, that in terms of emails, or like if I'm sending 10,000 emails, even 5 or 10 people are responding back, right? So I can make different things, sort of thing. Similarly, we discussed this phishing attacks. Email will look like that this email is coming from eBay, but this email is not coming from eBay. Okay, so even if they are using same logo or some sort of Amazon delivery or some sort of, they are saying that we are with respect to your recent order, can you send your SSN or your PPS number or your credit card information again? So it is possible that out of 10,000 people, might be 10 or 20 people think, okay, this is yes, I placed one order a few days back, so might be there is some problem, so they will say, okay. So it is possible. So that's why you have always check that from where it is coming. Like you can see here, might be you cannot see, but it's written that from eBay billing department. So, but it would be coming, but if you can click it, you will see it just a username, and anyone can change username to anything, right? So might be it would be coming from abc@gmail.com. Okay, so you have to take care that not from the title, you have to check actual email address, that is it coming from nuigalway.ie. Sometimes there would be some spelling mistake you cannot catch. Okay, so might be NUI Galway instead of nuigalway.ie, email was coming from nugalway.ie, and in first check might be you cannot differentiate that in Galway they use, instead of GA they use GE, for example. Okay, because they can get domain. We can get domains of same spelling mistake name. That's why most of the big companies like Facebook and Google, they always purchase thousands of similar looking domains so that people cannot cheat, right? Like for example, if instead of writing Google, Google, if I can make one website domain, and I can get domain if that is available, gogle.com, and same Outlook, just like Google web page, and I can get this sort of website in just 50 euros or 100 euros, right? But usually big companies, Amazon and eBay, they purchase all commonly misspelled websites to their websites, okay? So this phishing attack is very important to understand. So just like this, even if you are getting some email from very trusted thing, but you know that you have to read and you can quickly check, okay, there would be some sort of misspellings or this sort of things that might be copyright data or date is old, right? So it is possible to easily check that this web page is original or not. So I think we can stop here. If you have any question regarding phishing attacks or farming or social engineering, logic bombs, so you can ask. Otherwise, we can take break of 10 minutes. And one thing more, have you received any email about filling some sort of feedback or something? Feedback of this course or something, of this module? No email? So I think Friday is the last date, so it would be good if you can fill, right? And I think in a break you can do it, or I can give you extra 5 minutes to fill that thing. So it would be helping for us to make this course more good, for at least for your juniors, right? So we can take a break of 10 minutes till 11 a.m. Okay, we can start again. So like a botnet is a number of compromised computers, right, used to create and send spam or viruses or flood a network with messages as a denial of service attack. So we call this sort of victim machines as a botnet. So basically these are the compromised computers, and anyone sitting anywhere in the world can make different sort of zombies, right? And then these zombies would be used as they can spread viruses or worms, or they can attack some sort of in terms of like denial of service, right? And even these zombies can host illegal content. You don't know, but might be you would be someone would be hosting some sort of illegal music or movies or some sort of thing, right? So it is possible that if that particular machine is compromised, and it could be used for any purpose, okay? In the last week we discussed this thing, that man in the middle attack, that attacker can sniff, or they can read all the data that is going on particular link. So it is possible that this attacker may be presenting as a web server, and this victim would be sending all details of username and password to this attacker, assuming that this is a Gmail server, for example. And that's why we need encryption and decryption, right? Private and public keys. So if this private and public key mechanism is not there, then it very easily they can get data, or even this attacker can present himself as this victim to this web server and can get information from the web server. So that's why we need some sort of encryption and decryption of data, so that this victim and web server can communicate in a safe way, right? Then rootkit, for example, rootkit is just like that. Hackers can penetrate into some computer, they can install or collect some sort of programs. We call this sort of thing as a rootkit. It could be keystroke logger. For example, if someone has installed keylogger on my machine, then after some time he can check, okay, I was adding some passwords or some sort of doing transactions. So just from key logging, he or she can easily find out different things. So keystroke logger, they are freely available softwares, right? And it's very difficult to find out that sort of thing. And sometimes it do modify operating systems. So similarly, we have password cracking softwares available, and there are top 100 or 200 passwords that people commonly use, 123, 321, or something very, very easy passwords, or Ireland 123 or Galway 123, right? And you would be astonished by different studies that people have done, that even if you are using top 1000 passwords of the world, you can still get thousands of people's account passwords and all the stuff by using just brute forcing sort of thing. So for example, we can make dictionary attacks. In English, we have, for example, if we have 80,000 words, and obviously people have using not 80,000 English words, right, in their daily life. So it's very easy. If they are only putting English words as a password, what I will do, I will make a program in Java or in Python. I will take all words from dictionaries, and one by one I will test it for against some user. So it's called dictionary attack. So here you can see that, like, for example, if there is some pattern, or if you are putting your relative names or interest or some sort of thing, personal info, as a password, it could be maximum 20 things, and then it's very easily manually, someone who knows this personal information, in 5 minutes they can try different things and they can find out actual. So this is time to guess. Okay, so similarly for social engineering, in terms of, obviously they would directly ask your date of birth or your mother's name or something, right? So if someone is using password for words that are coming from American dictionary or even Oxford dictionary or some English, some other language dictionary, it would usually contain 80,000 entries, and computer will take less than 1 second to test all these 80,000 entries and get information, get correct password. Okay, but if you choose 4 characters, for example lowercase alphabets, then obviously this number of times would be keep increasing, because permutations or number of possible passwords would be changing, 2 raised to power 4, right, or something. Or if there are 4 characters, then obviously 26 raised to power 4 sort of thing. And you can see time to guess would be keep increasing. If you are, for example, if you are putting 8 characters of your password size, and obviously it's spreading all, they are taking from different keywords from keyboard, right? Then program would take 2 hours to guess your password. Same is the case if you are making some 12 characters password and it's alphanumeric, time to guess is 96 years for a simple computer, right? And even if you can make alphanumeric plus 10 or something, then obviously it would add more time to guess. So for your important passwords, obviously in terms of typing or something, it would be quite hard for you. But if you are administrating some important information, especially some user information or some company's data, then obviously you have to put your password of this sort of length or this sort of guidance. So by this way you can secure your password. So identifying security compromises, symptoms, just like that you were saying that computer was going shut down or something. So it could be a one symptom of some sort of security compromise, because operating system do also have some sort of security mechanism, and if they find some conflicting files, then obviously operating system itself it will shut down, it will try to shut down that program, or it might be it will shut down computer. Okay, so antivirus software detects a problem. Sometimes disk space disappears unexpectedly. For example, you have 256 GB hard disk, but within few days it keep filling. For example, in the last week 50% of the hard disk was empty, but now it's just 25%, and even you haven't downloaded some or shared some files. So disk space is, it means that there is some program which is consuming your disk space. Okay, and because of this blockchain applications, or so people are using other resources. Okay, so it is possible that you are you have become victim of some cyber attack. So pop-up suddenly appears, sometimes selling security software sort of thing, and usually it happens on websites that your computer is hacked or something. Don't click it. Files or transactions appear that shouldn't be there. The computer slows down to a crawl. It means that some program is consuming RAM, most probably consuming RAM of your computer. Unusual messages, sounds, or displays on your monitor. Stolen laptop. Obviously, like in US, one stolen every 53 seconds, and 97 never recovered. So it could be possible that you left your laptop on the bus stop or somewhere, then it will be, most probably it will be gone and it will not be recovered. So sometimes your mouse pointer moves by itself. It's not in your control. It means that someone else is controlling your computer. Okay, and they are using to do something. And obviously this spontaneously shutdowns or reboots could be one indicator that security has been compromised. So you have to check this sort of thing. As a network administrator, as a manager, you have to take care of these symptoms in your organization. In the first place, obviously in your own laptop, but obviously as a whole in your co-workers as well. So often unrecognized or ignored problems. So we could have malware detections, right? So obviously they would changes to your browser homepage start page, right? Ending up on a strange site when conducting a search, like you search on Google, but the results are coming from some other website. So it means that there is a malware who is converting your request from Google to some other abc.com. Okay, so it means that on behalf of you, they are sending request not to Google, to the other page. Okay, so this is because some malware software is there. Okay, so system-based firewall is turned off automatically. So what is the purpose of firewall? Very good functionality of firewall is that they usually block incoming traffic, unwanted incoming traffic, okay? And we know that all traffic would come through ports, right? We discussed this thing, ports and sockets in very detail. That every process can get information or can get data through ports from outside this computer, okay? So this firewall in every system usually block many ports. But if this firewall is turned off automatically, then it means that now there is no incoming traffic would be filtering out, right? So any data can go in and go out. So incoming and outgoing processes need ports, and this firewall usually block unwanted ports to be opened. So usually these ports are closed, okay, by firewall. So lots of network activity while not particularly active. So do you know how this Skype works? Any idea? Obviously, no one is using Skype nowadays. But the basic architecture of Skype is that you will work as a Skype helper, okay? And if your internet is very fast, Skype will automatically make you a super node, and you will be facilitating other Skype people to connect and send data and files, okay? So Skype would be using your bandwidth, Skype would be using your hard disk. And why they are using? Because in terms and conditions they mention it very clearly, and you said agree or something, right? So it is possible that sometimes big softwares, they are taking information from you in terms and conditions, and just like terms and condition of Facebook Messenger is very bad. Like they can sell your, or they can get your all contact numbers, even they can call them for different marketing purposes, and you said, okay, take everything from my smartphone, my images, my contact numbers, even messages, I'm fine with it. So that's why I never installed Facebook Messenger on my smartphone, because they can take any data and they can use it. And okay, so excessive pop-up windows, new icons, programs, frequent firewall alerts, right? Poor system performance. So these are the different symptoms of different spywares that they are present in your computer. So obviously best practices is that like how we can avoid these threats. So we discussed few things, but in terms of hardware, like we can install good routers or firewalls. There are so many settings in operating systems. So this is software firewall especially. We can install antiviruses, we can install some security patches, right? And similarly, obviously, we would be using some sort of user account controls, okay? And you know that there are so many antiviruses are there, and most of the time they do work, but virus making people are more smarter than these antivirus making people. So whenever there is some problem, then they will create some sort of antivirus for that. And we discussed this host-based firewalls, and they are very easy to set up on your computers as well, and you can just block different sort of ports. That's important. In terms of protecting your operating system, good idea is like avoid logging in as an administrator. Even if you are using Mac machine or some other Linux machines, don't try to log in as an administrator every time. Make a administrator account, and then from there you can make a restricted some sort of account and keep using that restricted account. Okay, so whenever you need some installation or something, you can simply sudo or some sort of you can use some commands, but even you can relog in as administrator, install something, and then log out, and then keep using your normal account that you would be. So it would be very helping that your administrator account wouldn't be compromised. Okay. And obviously use strong passwords. For example, you can use some quotations or some use of like length is important, obviously, like for example least 10 characters in length, right? Or it could be multiple uppercase, lowercase, English, or even any other language keyboard if you have, and numbers, right? And you can use special characters. So sometimes it is quite difficult to use, but if you have some practice like making alphanumeric passwords, then it's a good practice. Must not contain the user's name or part of the username. They are very easy to guess. Okay, so don't make your just username 123 or Galway or something with it, your password. They are very easy to access. Same is the case with your birthdays or children names or addresses, right? Or other family information. So creating strong passwords, a familiar code can be a good start. For example, for this code, for William Shakespeare code, you can simply take first word of each word and first letter of each word, and then it would become this one. And then obviously it's very easy. You can add some more complexity. For example, here you can simply, instead of I, you can put 1 or $sign for S, right? Or smaller and uppercase combinations. Then obviously this sort of password is hard to guess for machines. Instead of making some very simple passwords, okay? Or it could be, you could be more creative. So these are the different password guidelines, and never use admin, root, administrator, or default account or password. So you can read and try to follow it, okay? So it's very important that you should be following some sort of password guidelines for your important accounts, right? And obviously do not open email attachment unless you are expecting the email with the attachment and you trust the sender, okay? Because it would contain some malicious software. Same is the case with email links. Always check email links, because you know that some link title is different thing, but the actual URL is different. So do check what is the actual URL. Title may be misleading. It could be saying that it is it will open Gmail account, but it would be some phishing attack or something, okay? Similarly, avoid stupid hacker tricks, like even if they are asking you to something. So just remember that this button is controlled by your operating system. These buttons are controlled by programs. If I am writing this program to asking some information from you, it doesn't mean that if I'm saying that do you want to close this program and you would say yes, it's up to me who is writing that program. Even for yes, I wouldn't close that program, okay? But this cross is provided by the operating system. It could be from Mac, it could be from OS, right? From Windows. So this cross couldn't be cheated, right? But these buttons are the buttons that are running through some program, and in program I wrote this sort of logic. Even if I am saying that do you want to delete this file, you would say no, and even no would delete that file, okay? So because it's a code, but obviously this cross sign is different. Similarly, same in Mac, right? So if you are canceling something, so don't go for cancel, always use this sort of button, okay? Even like infected USB drives are there unattended by hackers in public places. You would say, okay, free USB. No, they are not free. Okay, even if you can reformat it, or even if you can some sort of other thing, no, might be they have some dedicated data that is hard coded in that hard disk, that USB, and they can be used to infect your computer. So just remember that there is nothing free in the world. Okay, so secure business transactions nowadays, this is very important in terms of secure business transactions. Most of the transactions nowadays, they are using HTTPS. Okay, so which is more secured, and you can see some sort of enhanced symbol there as well, some sort of lock which confirms that this website is running based on HTTPS. So there are some differences between HTTP and HTTPS. So as a network student or BIS student, you should know that what is the difference between HTTP and HTTPS. And obviously, other than URL security, there is no security in HTTP. HTTPS has secured or enhanced security. HTTP usually runs on port 80, but for HTTPS the port number is 443. HTTP is in terms of OSI layer, it's a application layer protocol, but HTTPS is a transport layer protocol. So this is a big difference. In HTTP, there are no TLS or security certificates, but in HTTP we have different sort of certificates. We will discuss digital signatures as well. So there is no domain validation here required in HTTP, but in HTTPS domain validation is required. And obviously, when there is no security, encryption is not present in HTTP, but encryption is there in HTTPS. So you should at least remember 4 or 3-4 differences between HTTP and HTTPS. Okay, so that you can differentiate between them. So backup important information is that no security measure is obviously 100% reliable. Even the best hardware fails. So we discussed this thing that you cannot rely on any machine, even if it's saying that reliability is 99.999%. You could be the person who is getting that 0.001 sort of thing. Okay, so that's why backup is very important, and you can take backup of your important documents. It should be encrypted, and then it should be transferred securely over the internet, or you can take cold backup. Like cold backup is just like using some external hard drives or USBs, right? Or you can email, that sort of thing. So in most of the time cases, it do help if you have some backup. Okay, so I do remember when I was working at DSI, Data Science Institute here, and our 1 year research work was totally gone because of this power failure. Hard disk of the server was gone. We cannot get any single file from that hard disk. But the good thing was that, like, I took backup just few days back, so I have backup of my research data and experiments. Otherwise, at least 6 months would be wasted straight away, because we were computing that sort of data and files for last 6 months. And you know, if you have new computer, you have to install all the softwares and set up installation sort of thing takes time, and obviously computation would take time. So backup is very, very important. Okay, even if your manager is saying that backup is not important, no worries, in 30 years there was no hardware failure, don't rely on your manager. You have to take backup of your important data. Okay, so because this hard disk can go at any time, Like, for example, if there is some, for example, power failure, or if there is some socket problem, it can spark and it can destroy your hard disk, or it can destroy some other thing. Okay, so that's why backup is very important. So if there is some cyber attack or cyber incident reporting, obviously do not attempt to investigate or remediate the incident on your own. Firstly, you have to inform your system administrator and ISP, of course, right? Unless instructed, do not power down the machine. Okay, unless instructed, do not remove the system from the network. So this is just about cyber incident reporting. Do you have any question so far? We discussed different things, so these slides would be helping if you can go again and revise everything. And because most of the things are guidelines, but they are very easy to remember, right? So, and obviously it would be helpful for your exam as well, because might be an exam I would be asking you how you can secure your password, or it could be any question from these slides. Okay, so how we can prevent cyber attacks, how we can prevent DOS attacks, or different sort of things. So you have to write it in your own words. I wouldn't expect you to copy paste 5 points from here to there, but at least 2-3 points in your own words, right? With some example, with some picture, that's fine. So last thing of this cybersecurity is about digital signatures. And digital signature is a type of electronic signature, just like a signature that we usually do on papers on banking, check, or different sort of thing, right? But this digital signature is comprised of some sort of mathematical algorithm, okay? And it's a mathematically algorithm routinely used to validate the authenticity and integrity of a message. Okay, so digital signatures are like electronic fingers. In the next few slides we will see how this digital signature process will work, but the main idea is that, like, we have some sort of keys and public and private keys. With the help of that, we are encrypting our data and sending it, and the receiver would like decrypt that data and confirm it that, okay, this is the same digital signature and time was same, especially at that which time that data was encrypted. Because it is possible that, for example, if I am sending one data to this laptop and I will encrypted and all the stuff, but that keys can be compromised, but I will encrypt this thing and I will add timestamp of 11:35 a.m. right, and date or something, timestamp, complete timestamp. But if the man in middle attack, if they modify some data, then obviously timestamp would be changed, right? And then receiver can match actual data and timestamp sort of thing, and they will know, okay, it means that data was hacked in between because the timestamp is changed. It's not the same timestamp 11:35. It should be something, right? So by this way, digital signatures can work. So how do digital signatures work? Digital signatures, like handwritten signatures, are unique to each signer. So digital signature solution providers, so there are many companies from where you can get your digital signature, obviously, facilities, and they would be following one protocol, and this protocol public key infrastructure, PKI, right? So this PKI requires a provider to use a mathematical algorithm to generate two long numbers called keys. One key is public and one key is private. Okay, so if I am using digital signature, I would have two keys, and I would be using my private key and then I will sign that any document or file with that key, and signature would be created using the signer's private key, right? And obviously no one knows my private key. And then this mathematical algorithm would act like a cipher, some sort of hashing. It will create a hash code, and encrypt that data. Okay. The resulting encrypted data is the digital signature. The signature is also marked with the time that that document was signed. Okay. So if the document changes after signing, the digital signature is invalidated. So change in time is one of the indication that the data was compromised in between the communication. Okay. So same slide but with some in picture form. So for example, this signer wants to send data over the internet or network to this person. Then this signer will use private key, and this private key and public key sort of thing he would be acquiring from one company. Okay. And this would be unique and obviously known to this signer only, private key. And on the basis of this private key, they will run one algorithm, hash algorithm, and it will generate hash, and this hash would encrypt on the basis of private this digitally signed document. Okay. And then this digitally signed document would be sent over the internet, and then public key would be used for this digitally signed document to generate one hash, and similarly same hash algorithm would be used to again regenerate hash from here. Okay. And these two hash values should be matched. If these two hashed values are not matched, it means that data was compromised in between here. Okay. And then obviously on the basis of that, this receiver can validate that this signature is valid or not. Okay. So there are common use of digital signatures, contracts and legal documents, so that you cannot deny, okay, I didn't sign it. So obviously you know that if you are providing some original documents and you have to sign it, digital signatures can do same thing for you if you are sending your documents over the internet. Sales agreements could be possible by using digital signatures. Financial documents, right? Healthcare data, in terms of privacy, in terms of sharing reports of different tests. So digital signatures can be used so that if one company is sending my test report to me, that report should be accessible only to me, and it should be confirmed that, okay, this report is valid or not. Or if I am sending my report to some government office or something, then they can use digital signatures to test that, okay, this report is valid or not. And obviously for government forms, if you are applying for some PPS or some passports or some sort of other things, then obviously you can use digital signatures, right? And lastly, we have shipping documents, like if we are sending so many items from cargo, then obviously we can validate that, okay, we sent these items and all the stuff. Okay, so these are the different things, common use of digital signatures that we can use, and businesses are using digital signatures in different purposes, and they are quite good in terms of maintaining security, especially files and validation over the internet. Okay, so any question? Otherwise we can stop for today.
The key in a few slides back, was it that like password, or I didn't get like how to the public key or the private key? How did it work? Is it encrypted like code or?
It's a long number, very long number,
Yeah.
48 bits or 58 bits, right?
Yeah.
So, but that algorithm will, for your data, they will, for example, they will generate some hash code. Okay,
Yeah.
and then we will use that key to encrypt that hash code.
Oh, so they are connected. Like the private key and the hash code are. The private key is encrypted. The hash code.
Yeah,
Okay,
or
okay.
and this hash code is all generating for this data.
Okay. That's
Okay.
it.
So it's just like that. So this private key is some sort of a box in which we are putting something and lock it,
Yeah.
right? And then we are sending this over the internet, and then we use a public key to decrypt that sort of thing.
Okay.
And similarly, that file, that hash algorithm would be again run, and it should generate same hash.
Yeah. Okay. I
And
follow.
if that hash is equal,
Yeah.
it means that actual data is not modified, right? And time and all the stuff.
Okay, I thought it was two different like procedures, but now I get it.
Okay.
For the written exam, how long do you think each question should be? Like marks wise, they're about 33 marks questions. So how long do you think writing the exam should present questions?
How long? Like duration of exam is 2 hours.
Yeah, like how much should you write? Like
How many lines?
Yeah.
Okay. It depends. Because okay, usually in my exam, if I say provide this thing and it has 10 marks, for example, time would be also mentioned. Like usually this question would be solved in 15 minutes. So it means that you have to put efforts of that particular questions of about 15 minutes. Okay. So it doesn't mean that you have to write down 20 pages for that 10 marks page. So minutes would be indicated, definitely minutes, estimated minutes to be indicated, so that you know that, okay, if I'm asking about very abstract question about networks, it doesn't mean you have to fill 20 sheets of your paper. It would say 10 minutes. So it means that in 10 minutes you can write important aspects of that question, right?
Yes.
So, so yeah, time would be mentioned.
Right.
In front of each question, time would be mentioned that this question is requiring just 30 minutes of your exam. So try to spend only 30 minutes, more or less 2-5 minutes are okay. But if you are spending too much time for one question, obviously it would affect to solve other questions, okay? So it would be conceptual. I wouldn't be like it. I would be asking, okay, what is the difference between this and this? But it doesn't mean that you have to provide bookish definitions of two things. You only have to explain in your own words that what is the difference between, for example, digital signatures and bots or some sort of thing, or viruses or worms. You can explain with some example, or you can just draw some picture. It's totally up to you, okay? So concept is more important. So there are slides, in week 10 might be after 12 week. I don't know how many slides would be there, but there would be so many, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to remember each and every slide, but concept should be clear. That what is the purpose of transport layer, what is the purpose of application layer, what are the important protocols working on each layer, why we are using TCP and why we are not using UDP, right? So then you can simply explain with some example or some picture, that's fine, it's up to you. And time would be mentioned, that 10 minutes or 5 minutes, right?